Hey, hello there. Tonight we're going to shoot a new target. We're going to shoot something with the L extreme, as the moon will rise anytime. So we're going to shoot narrowband data. And what shall we shoot? Let's say the Tulip Nebula, or perhaps the Wizard Nebula, also nice. And what telescope shall we use? You want the EdgeHD or the William Optics? Go with the EdgeHD. Yeah, that would be a nice thing. So let's have a coffee while he does the work, okay? You need an observatory, man. Can you even see the setup? Let me make that. The guy needs to learn how to make YouTube videos. Never forget the toe saver. Did you hear that soft beep? That's thanks to the new version of the app. Sorry. Let's stop this nonsense, okay? See you in a bit. So all we have to do now is wait until it is dark enough to fine-tune the focus, and then we can start the polar alignment routine of the OIII. This makes it really easy. It just starts shooting the area around the north celestial pole. It does a plate solve. After it's done that, it will rotate the mount for about 60 degrees. It will then again shoot an image, and then it will compare those two images and calculate the amount of error that there is in the polar alignment. So the OIII will report me how much error there is, if I should move the mount left or right or up and down, and then I can fine-tune the polar alignment. To get the best possible results, we also need to make calibration frames for the vignetting, and this is done by shooting flats. I use a tracing panel wrapped in a t-shirt to get a longer exposure time. I generally aim for about 1 second of exposure, and I can power this through the OSC, which is very convenient. Shooting flats with the ASI Air is best done through the auto run procedure, and then you can make the ASI Air determine the perfect exposure time. I use just enough t-shirt to make the exposure time at least 1 second, because that way I get rid of all kinds of side effects that come from shorter exposures. Many astrophotography YouTubers have a specific way of showcasing what they do. I do things very differently, and that is because of the ASI Air. It makes me a very, very lazy astronomer. Every morning I had the telescope during the night outside in my garden. The first thing that I do is looking out of the window, because it already shows me whether or not the plan or imaging session in itself has succeeded. The next thing I do, after having breakfast of course, is copying all files to my computer and then run my super speedy processing routine on it using Siril. So you see me processing this data into an HOO composite image. But we want more. So what I did was I mounted an S2 filter in the filter drawer on my telescope. And now I can create what is known as a Hubble Palette. So on several nights I was shooting the Wizard Nebula. Some nights I was shooting with the L Extreme and other nights with an S2 filter. So what I did was I went to my Siril working directory. In it, it contains my biases, it contains the darks, 300-second exposures of course to match with the lights. I have my flats and I made subdirectories in it, one L Extreme folder and an S2 folder. The same I did with the lights, and in the L Extreme folder obviously the L Extreme lights are available, and in the S2 folder the S2s. I created a script, and in this script I can combine all the L Extreme and S2 data in one go. So I can just check if the Siril working directory is correct and then click this script. And I will get back when the script is done, because this will take some time. So 7 minutes and 17 seconds and the stacking process is done. What we in theory could do now is go into the image processing tab, RGB compositing, and then just simply selecting the HA, OIII and S2 data. So the HA data we usually use as a luminance, and then for a Hubble palette we need to go into SHO. So the red will become the S2 data, the green will be the HA data again, and the blue will be the OIII. If we then go into, let's put this to the side, to an auto stretch of the data, then we will see it is not aligned. So this is what we can fix. We can select an area in the picture and we can just simply say align the data. This will take some time and then it will be aligned, but there will be a weird effect because of this. If I go into the LAB composition, then in that case it will show the best dynamic range for the SHO palette. If I zoom in on the image, I can see weird effects, especially in the corners of the image. I can see a color aberration in each of the stars. So the positioning of the color channels is still not correct. But there's a solution for that, and that is selecting the three files. So we have S, we have H, and we have O. And notice that I deliberately select them one by one, and I will show why that is in a few minutes. So these files I can give a sequence name, so let's call this SHO. You can click the convert, and now we will have a sequence called SHO. And I can now register these 3 images on top of each other. And this will not only align them, but it will also solve the issue that we showed before. So I can just simply click register, and this will take some time. So now we have 3 files, and those 3 files are registered on top of each other, so they are all equal. All stars have the exact same position. If I look in the folder, then I can see that Siril has created 3 files with a R prepended to it, and they are just simply numbered, so 1, 2 and 3. And that S2HA03 file name is nowhere to be seen. And this is the reason why I deliberately loaded the S, the H and the O in that order. So I now know that 1 is the S2 data. So I can rename this S2. The number 2 file was the HA data, and the third one was the O3. So these 3 registered files I can now safely add into the compositing tool. So let's start over again. S2 in the red channel, HA in the green channel, and we will load O3 in the blue channel. And if I now go into the RGB stack, then I will no longer see those weird effects, those color fringes on the stars. I can also add the luminance data, so we go with the HA again. So this we can use for our further processing. To get the most out of this picture, we are going to use Starnet++ to remove all the stars from the image, so we are only left with the nebulosity. And then stretching this nebulosity will then no longer bloat the stars into oblivion, and using that method we can make the best possible image. So with nice detailed nebulosity and very small and pretty stars. So that is the goal. Starnet++ needs to have a 16-bit linear file, and if we go into linear mode here in Siril, we will see nothing. Well, we want to remove the stars, but we will need to provide Starnet++ with data that it can work with. So we can do this by just applying a small stretch just up until the point that we start to see data here, and perhaps a little bit more. This is just by feeling. You can apply it, and then I will save this as starnet.tiff. 16 bits, and we will save it. So this starnet.tiff we need to run through Starnet++. In this case you can just simply copy the file that you need to process into the folder that Starnet++ is installed in, and then you can just simply drag the file on top of the executable. And this will again take a long time. So now Starnet++ made a picture out of this one, and the end result looks like this. So from this to this. So we got rid of all the stars. There are some small defects, like those purple magenta hues, and here is another one. Some leftovers from the star removal process. We will load these two files in Photoshop. And if we add the data with the stars in a layer above the data without the stars and put the blending mode into difference mode, then we will end up with a file of only the stars. So this we can flatten and we can save this as stars.tiff. We are now going to look into the starless image. So this is what Starnet made. A few things we are going to do. We are going first to stretch this. So I'm copying a layer and I'm going to make a small stretch to it. And I think I will do one more this time. Let's do a little S-curve. So I'm going to make a new layer again, and I'm going to get rid of that magenta. I use selective color. I will select magenta and I will just simply remove magenta from the mix. Let's do it like this. So, next thing, if we go to this website, bfastro.com, then in the tips and tricks, and then here in the creating Hubble Palette color mapped images page, we get an explanation of how to do these things. There are all kinds of steps that needs to be taken, and what I did is I stored all these steps into a action. So if I run this action now on this layer, there we go. So if I toggle this, you can see it improved it by some degree. We can try to run it again. Let's see what that does. No, I'm really liking this. This is looking quite good. So you see all those leftover parts from the stars, but let's not bother too much with that. We can now create yet another new layer, and what I like to do is go into filter and then camera raw filter, and I like to add the saturation and the vibrance a bit, not too much, and the clarity is also something I like to bump up. Let's go for 40. So now we already have something that looks quite more like the Hubble palette. And another thing that we now need is we need to at some point add back in those stars. So we go into the stars file, we will open that up, copy it, put it into a new layer on top of everything else, and we will put the blending mode into screen. And there we have it. We have the Wizard Nebula in a Hubble palette. We have the stars added back in. And what we can do as a final tweak is try to get those stars a little bit smaller. So I'm creating yet another new layer. I'm going into the select color range, and I'm going to add the fuzziness up until the point where I get to see the nebulosity being selected. So something like this. Now all the stars are being selected, Then I go into select, modify, expand. And I usually pick something of 4 pixels. You need to experiment with that. Then I go into modify feather again, and I take half of the pixels that I added in the expand. And now I go into filter, other, minimum. And then I need to play with the numbers. So let's go into this area. Here we have some reasonable large stars. Let's see how small we can make them without making it look artificial, or I would say too artificial. Let's try this. Let's deselect. Yeah, it's already a bit smaller. We can try one more pass. Let's see what happens if we do color range selection again. Perhaps no, the fuzziness cannot go up. Let's do another select, modify, expand. Again 4 pixels. Select, modify, feather. The half of that amount of pixels. And then we go into filter, other, minimum. And I'd like to not overdo it. I think this is nice. And we deselect. Yeah, the stars are substantially smaller now. So, perhaps we can do some final adjustments by just going into this new layer that I created. Click on the adjustment layer for curves, and now I'm going to zoom in a bit on the image, and I'm going to use this icon over here where I can just now click in the image where I want to darken or lighten places. So for instance, here I like to have it darker, but the area just outside of it I want to have brighter. So I can drag those up and down depending on my needs and what I want to see here. This is already quite some image, perhaps a little bit too aggressive. No, I think this is looking good. Can we do more? Or should we leave it like this? So there we have it, the Wizard Nebula, shot with an one-shot color camera using the L-Extreme filter and a separate S2 filter. Thanks for watching and see you next time.
Hey, I totally forgot to mention it, but I passed the 1000 subscriber line or threshold, and wow, I didn't expect that to happen, at least not this soon, because yeah, well, I just make videos and apparently people like them. So thank you for subscribing, and I think I will have a community tab or something like that open up to me so I can have more interactions with all the viewers, and hopefully I can get some feedback from everybody to see which kind of content would be the best for, yeah, you lot, all the viewers. So yeah, thanks again for subscribing, and more will follow. That is my promise to you guys and girls, because I saw that the female amount of subscribers is also finally rising. It was previously all men for some reason, but yeah, thank you girls that you also like this kind of content. So yeah, let's see each other in another video.